Yeah, it's a full program because immediately we're starting with an entirely different topic called Democratizing the Wild West of Distribution, which might be of importance for many people here as well who are working in and around the film industry. This is going to be a very, very hybrid panel because we'll have two people with us online via Zoom, and we have two people here in the studio. First, let me invite the people in the studio. It's Mezen Danawi. He's the head of NPO Start and NPO Start Plus. He's sitting over there. Please come join me. And we also have Kristine Knudsen, a film producer of the animation film Richard the Storks, amongst many other films. Kristine, you are somewhere here as well? Yes. Hello. Yes, a warm applause. Yay. There she comes, like, barging in. And then we have two people online. I hope they can hear me and are present here on Zoom. We have Sebastian Wehner. He's the co-founder and CEO of Wonderbox. Oh, yeah, there you are, Sebastian. Welcome. And we have Irina Albita, who's the co-founder of Film Chain. Irina, welcome. Can you all hear us loud and clear?
Yes.
Yes. All right. I see people nodding. I hear people saying yes. Welcome. So we have, like, this is a very funny panel for me because we had a really nice.
We're funny already.
Yeah.
For me, at least. We'll find out if you're also funny for the rest. No, because we already had a really interesting pre-chat, and basically we kind of have the whole timeline in a sense of going from film production all the way to film distribution, and then also from maybe one of the most important moments in the film production chain, cashing out, you know. So Kristine, you are a producer. Mezen, you are part of our Dutch video-on-demand platform of the public broadcasting company. Sebastian is the founder of a company, Wonderbox, which allows people to kind of create their own platform to share their content, basically make their grassroots competitor of NPO Start. And then Irina is the person where you come to, I guess, in the end, maybe get some of that hard-earned money. And the reason that we have all of you here together is because, as we discussed in our pre-chat, is that we are living in a time now where there are so many forms of online digital technology that could make all of this work easier, more accessible, more transparent, more democratic as well. But at the other hand, some of the things are also a bit more challenging, a bit more oblique. Where to find the right channels, where to find the right partners. How do you get a fair reimbursement for the work that you do as a producer or a creator? How do you share those things? How do you compete with mainstream competitors? There's many, many challenges, and that's why this panel is called Democratizing the Wild West, because I think it's safe to say that it is a Wild West. The idea is that we're kind of going through it in a chronological way, but also Sebastian and Irina, for all of you, like, even if you're on Zoom, just feel free to barge in the conversation if you want to add something or ask a question. Also for everybody in the audience, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions whenever you want. Having said all of that, setting up the whole thing, now
very good at
thank you.
Breathing in and breathing out.
I just
Time
had
to catch a breath.
And you had no break between the panels.
Well, I just had a good panel about deep VR and breathing techniques, so you know I'm totally aware of my breathing.
You asked a round of applause for your guest, but how about a round of applause for yourself?
Yeah,
Oh, thank you. Way too kind. Let's save that for the end of the day.
Will do.
Christina, let's start maybe with you. You're a film producer. You worked on a an animation film, amongst others, Richard the Stork, which was a big success, a big documentary. And you are then in the process of, you know, selling the film, trying to get new markets, also trying to, at the end, you know, cash out. Can you talk a little bit about this process and what it's like for you, or maybe rather the journey that you've been on to find different ways to get your film out there once it's been made? Because this kind of sets in gear the whole process that we're going to talk about then afterwards, right?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So I'm Kristine. I am a German and a Norwegian producer. So I have two identities. I call myself a double spy. And I have produced several. I've never produced documentary, but I've produced a lot of live action films. And I'm in the middle of producing the second feature animation. and I've now also moved into animated
Oh,
TV
I'm
series.
gonna ask
Don't
you
worry.
if you can be a bit closer to our mic so that
absolutely.
everybody at home can also pick you up.
Sorry,
Yeah,
of course.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm focused. I've been mainly in feature films and also moving in from live action to animation. And we did one film called Richard the Stork, and very, very full of imagination as we are. We're now doing the Richard the Stork #2. So, and I think it was a quite traditional way. So I don't feel very innovative when you ask that question, because we've been in a very, traditional theatrical way of creating a film. It's a film of budget around 9 million euros, so you need a lot of financiers on board already. And many of them were also distributors and very important sales agent. And we worked with Global Screen on the first film. And then basically we financed the film, we produced it, and our audience was mainly the B2B, you could say.
The business to business.
Yeah, it was the sales agent introduced us to their clients, which were the distributors of all the different territories. And we made a film, and they got it, and from that point, they took it to their audiences in their respective countries. And I think what was really interesting, so that's a very classical way of doing it, and I think, so that was the first film. And what was interesting was that it was, I don't know if that was a thing about the time, but they started selling the film while we were making it. And producing an animation feature film takes several years, like it took over 2 years. So we could see at each market that they had sold it to new distributors. So that was a way of, knowing about that there's interest in the market and there's an audience for this already. So by the end of when we were finished, the different distributors could then release it. And then we have basically, went around, had the premieres and waited for their feedback, of course, on the project. Mm-hmm. And that feedback comes in, either numbers in the sense of revenues and sales, and numbers, how many people actually saw your film, what did they think about it. And I think it's, for us in a way, the first market was the business to business. There we got the reactions, how do they like the film. In every market we could show them more of the animation, how we proceeded towards the production. So that's the first step, and then the second one is really towards the audience.
So this sets us kind of on a course, because in this panel we're also going to talk about some, let's say, more innovative platforms or kind of new ways of doing this, because that's more him, but that's also maybe a bit more Sebastian. So yes. Sebastian, as a co-founder and CEO of Wonderbox, could you maybe give kind of the counter narrative how creators could also distribute their work through your platform? And can you talk a little bit about what that entails?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Happy to do that. Well, we ourselves are producers, and so the idea for Wonderbox really came about this whole challenge we just talked about, getting to market, how to make your content visible, and also the technical challenges that are involved with that. And we were specifically looking at the app market. So Wonderbox is basically a platform that allows content creators to publish any kind of content, so video games, videos, audio content, interactive books, and more, onto mobile devices and also on Apple TV. And you can do this quite autonomously, and you can more or less, also from the whole cost structure, grow with your success. And that was what was really the founding principle from the get-go, because we thought it could be really interesting to not follow that traditional model, which is a little bit, to quote the movie Field of Dreams, build it and they will come, right? You make a big feature or something and you expect the audience to arrive, but rather start building small, iteratively, find your audience, consistently enrich their lives, and they will stay, and that's the other paradigm here. And that's what Wonderbox basically enables, or that's one way to work with it, because that's the most tools you can do it in all sorts of different ways. But our initial vision as producers was to maybe start with audio content and then produce a little bit of video content or games on top of that, make the offering larger and larger over time, raise the subscription price, and really grow a community. And then maybe even then you can also do a TV series on top of that. But you can also use it if you already have a series or a feature film and you want to have ancillary content published, or we have broadcasters who use it to engage the audience. But the initial case was really growing IPs on the mobile market. That was our first nucleus when we founded the company.
Thank you. So what I kind of get from this is that, you know, what a thing like Wonderbox could do is maybe allow a creator to maybe use their own platform through Wonderbox as kind of like almost a world building situation where you have maybe an idea or kind of like a story world, and you can add new layers to it in the process almost in real time, which is of course quite a different kind of like timeline that you're on as a, you know, Kristine, you had with Richard the Stork, of course. And I'm like, in the previous panel, we were talking a lot about this battle for attention for children as well, right? And I think ultimately this paradigm shift, Sebastian, that you're talking about is related to this as well. There's now many ways of starting your content or your art and getting it out there, which isn't immediately like the you build it, they come model, which might be a bit fraught and also a bit more difficult nowadays because not everybody can afford to get that attention from everybody anymore. Mezen, I'm just going to work through everybody as well, and then hopefully, you know, everything will open up. But Mezen, as the head of NPO Start and NPO Start Plus, our Dutch VOD platform for the Dutch public broadcasting, you must be quite familiar with some of these themes that I'm stating now as well. You know, the battle for attention, the kind of like multiple ways that people reach the programs and the series and the films that you have on your platform. Can you talk a little bit about NPO Start and NPO Start Plus and about the way that you go about presenting it, maintaining it, the course that it's on at the moment?
First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Yes, Dutch Public Broadcasting is now a 100-year-old institute in this country. And 2 weeks ago, we celebrated 70 years of television. So we do originate from that model you just designed.
Yeah.
But we've been in the evolution to going into a more streaming future. We hope we're the biggest storyteller. You also use the word storytelling, so that's very important. To mark that, we're always trying to be the biggest storyteller in this country, telling all the stories to all people, not just commercially viable target groups. And we've been telling those stories, as we've seen the last 2 weeks when we celebrated those 70 years of television, for broad audiences on just one show. I don't know if the Dutch people in the audience that watched the shows 2 weeks ago about 70 years television noted they were very broad. And if you were a kid back in those days, you had to like the shows your parents liked because there was nothing else. There was a radio, of course, but there wasn't anything else just catered to your needs. And that's the future we're moving to, not only for kids, of course, but since we're talking for kids, I think it's important to focus on that. Sure. My colleague Robert is also here. And he's always taught us at Dutch Public Broadcasting that we need to have a 360 degrees view on how, especially the kids are using media these days. So yes, of course, we're in the evolution from making one show for all to making, in fact, one playlist for everybody. Yeah. From one to many to one to one. And it's crucial that we personalize. And in streaming for NPO Start and NPO Plus, that's the main thing we're doing right now, trying to go from broad shows into more specific and catered shows. And the way we distribute them must be in a much more personal way, catered on your needs and not maybe the whole family. At the same time, it is for us also a worry that we don't want to get too individual because we're a broadcaster and trying, you know, to get people together and watch together and have shared experiences. So it is a chance for us to get personal through streaming, but it is also a challenge to stay broad as a broadcaster and, you know, keep people involved and in touch with each other. and have some shared moments.
Yeah, it's almost like a contradicting term is that you're a broadcaster
trying to do
doing
both.
narrowcasting.
Exactly. Trying to do both.
Good luck with that, because that's also what this panel is about. I guess that ultimately, we're talking about some traditional forms of going about doing your business and some new means of conducting the same thing, but with maybe different end result. I guess, the Wild West in this panel also refers to the many tools that are available now, which are often not owned by any of the people that are sitting here on this table or are with us here via Zoom. We're talking about, of course, our Netflixes, we're talking about our YouTubes, we're talking about our, if we're talking about music, our Spotifys, etc. And this is, of course, a thing that we were talking about in the previous panel, this vying for attention, this competing with other mainstream services. How do you go about as a let's be honest, smaller, more grassroots form or more traditionally entrenched company or agency or institution, how do you balance those things and how do you make the things fair? Because, for instance, on YouTube, there can be a lot of things there, but who gets paid for them? With the NPO Start Plus, it's a great tool to access many shows, many programs on the Dutch TV. But who is using them? If they can also go to Netflix. And this is maybe an open question for anybody who likes to answer that. But how do those new tools, which are often not in your own hands, tools that you don't really control, how do they kind of endanger or maybe how do you relate to them with your own work practice? Maybe that's the best way to ask the question.
At public broadcasting, it is for us maybe less important than the rest of the panel, because we tend to go our own way. We get paid upfront through taxes, so for us it's much more important to cater our audience than make money on them. We don't make money on them, just to be sure. So we tend to have our own, we go our own way here. Of course, we monitor how the market is changing, but to us it's much more important how audiences are changing their behavior.
But you have a service, you sell a platform, you have a premium part of the platform at least.
Of course, and
there's
money
also
flows
a free,
in. And maybe Irina can tell us more about that, because that's her main focus. That money goes into to the people that produce the shows. It doesn't, and goes into the show, so it doesn't go into any shareholder or any commercial incentive behind it. We do go our own way, but of course we monitor what the market does. But as long as behavior is changing and we can follow that and stay relevant within that new behavior, our job is done. And that's where maybe the commercial people in this panel start making money.
Kristine wants to add something.
No, I just want to, because it's so interesting, so I just, because we have so different roles.
Yeah.
But as a producer, it's fun because, I'm not a distributor.
No.
And I'm not a sales agent either. I'm a producer. But we as producers, we have become more and more also marketeers. Mm-hmm. Like we have to be, good old days. I don't know if they were good, but they were old days. At least, distribution was more, it did the marketing. But in my, the last 10 years, we've seen a development that as producers, we need to get involved really early about finding key, identifying who's the audience, or it's really key to the success of the film or the TV series you do to know who it's for. And it's a new skill set that producers have, started to train themselves in. And I think it's a great opportunity because we will, we collaborate with distributors, but the more I think producers and with them, the filmmakers themselves know their audience and can have feedback early, the better projects we can make. Yeah. Because that's always, and that's what's fun about, I'm working with Irina, and she is she has this platform about monitoring the money coming in, but also the data, because it's not just about money, it's a lot about the feedback of who has seen your film, what demographics is it, and just getting that feedback fast back to the producer makes us make projects that are more relevant. It just makes it more informed, the whole process. Yeah. And that gives us the ability to make better quality, which is more relevant for the audience. So I think that to have a transparent process, and of course with big platforms that are not usually European, we don't have that access to the information. But of course, it's a big waterfall of information out there. So, any form of information is better than none.
I recognize this. I recognize this need for information, and we do share that at public service.
Yeah.
Of course, we have to be transparent,
Yeah.
and we want to, because it helps you make better shows, right? That helps us engage our audiences better.
Yeah.
Well, Kristine, I have to thank you because you gave me the best bridge to go to Irina. Irina, welcome as well. So you're the co-founder of a company called Film Chain. You apparently already also work together with Kristine, which was exactly what I said, that you have the whole chronology of like a film production to, monetization process here in this panel. But for everybody who's wondering, can you first talk a little bit about what Film Chain is, and also what kind of like services you, for instance, can give to Kristine so she can do her work better as a film producer, or more informed.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's been an absolute pleasure working with Kristine and supporting her and her team. I think there's been so many really exciting and interesting points shared up until now. But I want to talk a bit about sort of where the idea for Film Chain was born from. At Film Chain, we're the people behind the money flows. So we're the least glamorous part of the film TV industry. We're the accountants, the royalties management platform that supports film and TV series to make sure they can monitor at any given point the performance of their titles. I always think about it. It's all about keeping your fingers on the pulse of your film as the film is rolling out on the market. And particularly as we're seeing right now, the content of volume is increasing due to the changing digital nature of the landscape. All our media clients, be them independent producers or larger media enterprises, they're all sort of sharing with us that they've been struggling to keep up with at times their responsibilities, which are royalties calculations and reporting responsibilities. While we have so much technology on the screen, and we're here and we have Kristine and some amazing projects and productions, particularly in the animation space, with incredible technology on screen, what happens is that the processes behind the scenes are still to date fairly manual in the way the money flows, the payments, and the reporting is happening. At Film Chain, particularly our focus is we're calling ourselves the first digital collection agent, supporting in an automatic and transparent way film and TV producers. And for us, we're touching quite a few grounds. We're working with producers like Kristine, supporting investors, sales agents, talent. So anyone that needs to receive a piece, as you mentioned earlier, the cashback, they can all access their money and data in an automatic and what we always strive for, a more real-time and transparent way. Because one of the things that we have seen since we started the business and our team of technologists and filmmakers is that things in a traditional space take a really, really long time for the feedback to come back. It's not we all have our mobile phones, we all want to check our bank account, but the feedback in our industry is often, you have to be patient and wait half a year or quarterly or a year at sometimes to be able to get that feedback of information.
Thank you, Irina. Yeah, what I think is really interesting is that I hear all of these kind of like developments, you know, like Wonderbox, where you can really just create your own space that people can subscribe to, and you can make all your art and stories and content available in the way that you want to. And you have, Irina, what you're doing with Film Chain, where suddenly this whole process of like tracking your data and the revenues that you're generating is like instantaneously, or like has a much more direct feedback. And also, I guess with the things that are happening with VOD platforms and all, there's like many fast changes, some of them almost maybe too fast for the industry to keep up, because at the one hand you have all these technological developments, but at the other hand, film and TV series, I guess as well, are not the most flexible mediums. They take years to make. There's a big team behind them, some commissions, some producers, some creative people as well. So there's like almost, it sometimes feels like you have like trying to fit a square into a round hole, right?
You have to look forward.
Yeah, so what is this, like, another open question for anybody who wants to jump in, but those kind of like two timelines that are intersecting right now, one of the old ways of doing it and the like really rapid developments of new ways of conducting business and distributing films. How are those things intersecting for your work now at this moment, and where do you think this is going?
We're in the middle of a transition.
Yeah.
So it's a very good summary you're giving there. It's all about looking forward, but not forgetting where you're coming from and keeping that relevant too. So for us as a broadcaster, we have to, you know, we're playing soccer on two fields. We're trying to stay relevant in the linear world, but also trying to get a good footprint in the streaming. And indeed, production of TV is a massive, complex set of moves by a lot of people. So I think the best thing to do here is really look forward and don't hesitate too much. Not too many yeses or nos, and you know, just or maybes. Just go a yes or a no, and then you know, try and be innovative. And you'll try things that will fail, but as people tend to say, fail fast and go on and try the next thing. Because if you keep waiting, this whole Wild West is going to go by before you know.
Yeah.
So you have to step in, and you're gonna have to step in fast, and because production takes so long, start things up pretty fast.
Kristine, I see you furiously writing along, so I'm
writing notes now.
Yeah, I presume that you have something really important to add to this as well.
No, I wanted to hear what he says.
Yeah, I want to know what Sebastian thinks as well.
Says about this, and then I can say something as well.
That sounds perfect.
I just agree.
Sebastian.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you. I wanted to add to what Mezen just said. I think exactly, it's a little bit like working out, you know. It doesn't help if you just do it for 1 week, really extreme, but you have to do it consistently to build a muscle in a way. And sometimes you then figure out after a day, oh my God, it's aching everywhere. I did something wrong there. And then you have to adjust your exercising routine. And to Kristine's points earlier, yeah, it's true as well for the producers, not only for the public broadcasters that are playing on two fields. It might be even more than two fields. Yeah. Because we're living in a multi-channel world, and it's not only us producers, but it is also our consumers. And we have a much more fragmented audience now with much more different usage cases and how they use it. Because I don't know, when I was sitting at a doctor's appointment waiting with my mother like 30 years back, I didn't have a mobile phone to watch something for 2 minutes or something, right? So you have different formats, you have snackable content and stuff like that. But then also there's a big possibility for the producer to bring all your content to all these different channels and find audiences that you might not even found in the past, wouldn't be able to, or also find different ways to build your content in the future. So yeah, I think you have to go out there, expose yourself to the possibilities. And I know it's easy to say because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of work. But we see it with some of our clients. They have their content on Roku, on Netflix, on linear channels. They have their own Wunderbox. And it's not cannibalizing each other at all. It's actually just that they find different people. You know, someone wants to subscribe to their content for 6 months or even longer, and they want to have this dedicated experience. But for others, they just want to briefly have their kids watch it on YouTube somewhere. And yeah, so it's a really fragmented audience, and it's a really multi-channel world, and you have to find and work these different outlets and possibilities that present itself to you.
Kristine,
if I may jump in.
No, go ahead, Irina.
My perspective on this is fairly strong. I feel like we're already living in the future, and the future is taking over the present incredibly fast. And it's so important to look at the new generations and how they use media. This week, the big news that took over particularly my news stream was all about the metaverse. It seems that very soon we're going to all live in the metaverse, and we're seeing already games and content being consumed by the new generation in a second world, in an absolute virtual reality. And this ties in with the prior panel that just took place.
Yeah.
And also the looking at the way the newer generations want to access their data, and the fact that they're becoming significantly more financially savvy from younger ages, and significantly more savvy about the way the technology is completely ubiquitous. And I feel that there's a lot of responsibility for technology companies like ours to also play a role in that education. We love this industry. This is why we're dedicated to innovating in this space. But of course, one of the things that is super important for us, and every day when we wake up, we think, do we need to throw technology at a certain issue or challenge? Not always. Sometimes some things can be solved with maybe more standard technologies, not the most like high-tech emerging piece of tech out there. And I can tell you one situation that we had to really think about when we've been on the market and working with film producers, public, private film financiers, European funds, and so on, and trying to tell them, well, there's this new thing that you can use to monitor your money and data. But the moment they heard that our technology uses emerging tech, such as blockchain, to record transactions, a lot of them took a step back, because the first thing for them was, oh, this is scary. This is scary stuff. It really came down to us, and we always take a lot of responsibility to the idea of building that educational gap. We took a decision of saying, while of course blockchain is surrounded by cryptocurrencies and digital assets, we took a very sort of clear decision of having a product that doesn't use cryptocurrencies. And the reason why that was to actually bridge easier and ease the work with traditional and actual producers, real life producers, that would not find this such a hard step to go through. Because there are some steps, and there is education that needs to happen before we can all move into the metaverse. So I think the future is here. It's all about having curiosity, having openness to trying things out, like my fellow panelists said, and it's also a matter of technology companies like ours. While we always try to push the boundaries further, be there as a bridge of communication between the traditional and let's say the 20, 50 years from now, or whatever we can imagine that can happen in the future.
Thank you. Wow. You want to add something to that, Kristine? You promised that you were going to add something one speaker ago.
I'm just, in awe. It's hard to say anything after that. No, I just want to get back to what is the future for producers? Or, I mean, we clearly in the future. But I think it's a time of, it's a bit scary because you have to know so many things. And, being a producer is already, you have to be a generalist, but now you have to also kind of build an audience. But I think it's also a really like a time with a lot of opportunity. You can go the traditional ways of cinema, theatrical. You can go straight to a streamer. You can, self-publish your things on YouTube and find different business models. So,
or on Wonderbox.
Yes, you can absolutely. I will. I will call you afterwards. No. So it's. I think it's also like mainly there's many more roads to go down now than a few years back. It's so you have many chances. Some doors close, because if you get if you have one door closed and some other opens usually, and I think that the opportunity to actually put your own content out and build an audience is really a great opportunity, which I have not done yet. But I think the most interesting thing is the fast feedback you can have from your audience, and to actually learn from what they want or how they respond early, and that's what I will hope to work more on.
Yeah, what I think is very interesting, also what Irina is saying, is that, some of these technologies in some ways almost seem too good to be true. Like they are there, but they seem frightening. Something like the blockchain, and you associate it with a crypto scam or something like that. And that kind of brings me to this point where all of these new developments, you also say that, Kristine, are like there's so many, and some of them might seem also too good to be true, and maybe some of them actually are, like I'm still going to to Spotify, for instance, and the many artists that are resisting the low payout, how not transparent it is, what you earn as a musician with the work that you put out. And I'm wondering how all of you are kind of like looking at those things, like the fair practice side of it, because there's many things possible now online, but which ones of them are fair to a producer or to the platform itself, or to, maybe most important, let's be frank, to artists that create the work that is being shown on those platforms, and also through the work that you do as a producer. So, Sebastian, maybe this is a good question for you as well, because I think that Wonderbox has an interesting way of doing this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, since this is a producer-driven platform, we see our primary customer is the content creator. And we want to enable them to basically then bring their content in the best way possible to their audience. And yeah, to your point with Spotify or with YouTube, of course, for these large platforms, and it's just, I think, just because of their sheer size, they might not be malevolent in that sense, but content is just fuel to them, right? And I think this is something that also as a producer you have to understand. I think you are the best guardian of your own content. And maybe it's a little bit like raising kids, I mean, you have to sometimes see like, okay, does he like that? Or does she like that? Or, oh, no, that doesn't work for her. And I think it's a little bit with your content and with your audience to see like, there might be some platforms that just don't work for the kind of content you produce or the kind of audience you have. And we want to be really transparent with this as well. So, I mean, really also to Irina's point, we decided at the beginning of this year, we really have to become an educational company in that sense. We have to educate our content creators we work with in the best way and fastest way possible about what they can do with us, and if what we're doing and the service we're providing is actually something that is the right thing for them to do, because it might be not. And that's why, for us, it's really our cost structure is really focused on per subscriber. So when they gain a subscriber, they pay a certain amount for each subscriber to us, and they can cancel on a monthly basis, because that's what I always wanted. I want to basically scale with my success and then see, it doesn't work. Okay, then I can quit it again. And I think that's what all of these tools need to enable in the future, that you give producers, content creators, this possibility that they can quickly figure out, is it something that works for them? And if it isn't, it might even be that cinematic release is the right thing, or going still with a linear public broadcaster. I think it really depends, because not only the audience is fragmented, so is the content. And I think this is due to the advent of digital distribution. I mean, look at, I think, Spotify or music in itself. You have now so many micro tastes in music just because you can serve them through these tools. And I think we see the same happening in other media formats now.
I agree so much, Sebastian. It feels like the chain represented by Irina and Kristine moving faster than maybe the middle of the chain where you and I see it. We shouldn't stop that. And it's all about what you said, Kristine. We should inform you faster on that feedback loop and give you the feedback of the audience. And when something doesn't work, just stop and go to the next and move faster. So let's all, within that chain, keep up with the pace the content creators are creating, because that's really going up, and not, slow down in the middle of the chain.
But I presume that must be also a challenge for the broadcasting system, because you of course you don't have the venture capital behind you like a Netflix has. You don't have an army of web developers and IT people like running around the platform all the time. So what kind of challenges do you have as this kind of streaming platform, which is part of this older established institute, but also needs to cater these new, very digital demands?
The main challenge is the speed, of course, just like you mentioned. But the good news is people like Kristine and other producers are happy to be with us and are happy to create something that we distribute on a massive scale. So they're still much interested in our channels. And that will, give us the speed in another way maybe, but in regulation, etc. This is a main challenge. A public broadcaster can never move as fast as a venture capital financed company from let's say, the States.
Yeah. I'm looking at the audience as well. If there's any questions, feel free to ask them. We have a mic on site, so if you have a question, raise your hands.
Feel free.
Feel free. There's many people here. You can ask many different type of questions. I'm also looking to everybody who's joining us online. You can also ask your question by putting it in the chat box. Feel free to put your name in there as well if you want your question to not be anonymous, so we know who's asking the questions. In the meantime, Irina, I have one more question for you as well about this speed and this service that you provide. And I kind of framed it in maybe it's sometimes for people it seems too good to be true, but I wonder what kind of experiences you've had with people that have taken use of your service and maybe noticed the difference and how that helped them, or what kind of reactions they gave you. What kind of feedback do you get from the producers and the creators that work with Film Chain?
Wow, a really good setup. It's been an absolute whirlwind of experiences for us since we started the company. We've been around since 2014, but Film Chain is in its shape and form as it is now, was launched in 2018. So we're talking about 3-4 years since we've been on the market, essentially trying to innovate in a space that it is known as fairly traditional, which is the collection account management space. That is all built on trust, because the moment you act as a trustee on behalf of all the parties involved in making a film, the producers, the financiers, the sales agent, reputation is the most important thing at play. And of course, we were an underdog, the newcomer, the new kids on the block coming into the space. And we were thinking, well, what is our biggest asset? What do we have to bring? At that point, we weren't the market leader. We were trying to still build up our market share. And we realized that technology was the biggest thing we had going for us, and particularly the ability to say, don't just trust us, but go and verify the information around every single euro that came into the bank account, and go and verify every single euro that went out to a certain beneficiary. So this was essentially moving a huge paradigm shift from saying trust us because we've been around on the market for 20, 30 years to just go and verify the information yourself. And that brings a huge amount of accountability in the data and money flow. And what we're seeing is that clients, even clients that would have been happy to just wait and receive their money quarterly or maybe every half a year, they have, now that they have a means, a dashboard that they can access from their mobile phone, from their desktop, they can come in and see at any given point whether they have 50 euros in their, what we call their dashboard or digital wallet, or whether they have 10,000 euros. Of course, a happier time. And they can withdraw those funds when they want, any given point. And one of the coolest metrics we think we have at Film Chain, and we're always sharing it weekly with the team, is the lowest withdrawal of funds that week. Of course, everything is confidential, but we're seeing clients coming in. Maybe they have $25 or 25 euros on their account. They'll just click with a button and those funds are transferred to their bank account. And this for us is interesting because it shows that producers and the creators, they do want access to the funds, regardless of the amount. They want access then and there. And for us, this is very important. And we want to make everything we can in order possible to make that a reality for them.
Thank you. This reminds me of those like old royalty checks that musicians and artists in the States still get, and then you get like a check for a thing that was made 60 years ago and nobody watches anymore, and you get like $10 mailed to you by post. But I love that has its digital translation as well. Well, slowly coming to the end of this panel, Kristine, I'm coming to you again. You're now working on the sequel of Richard the Stork, and I'm wondering, we were talking about all these transitions and these different technologies that are being introduced. Are you taking a different approach now with a new film like that, or are you still kind of traversing the traditional route still?
I think we're seeing what's happening after this pandemic. I think that we have been... We're in the middle of production.
Yeah, a bit more mic, more mic.
We're in the middle of production. And I think that we haven't started selling the film yet because of the pandemic. The markets haven't really been active. It's different when people meet than when you meet online. So I think we will have to see what happens. Really, it's really kind of a different world than 5 years ago when we were started producing and selling the first film. So I think that I can tell you that in 2 years.
When you will be invited back again at the Cinekid for Professionals panel, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, I could ask the same question to Sebastian and to Mezen as well, and maybe also to Irina, but also maybe how this kind of like pandemic times changed, of course, media consumption. So I presume that media distribution and production also changed in the process. Did you see...
The distribution has accelerated so much, and if we can call it the Wild West, it just got wilder by the by the pandemic. I mean, we're seeing data showing us how fast people are now migrating from, for example, linear channels to streaming services. Yeah. And it just went faster through the lockdowns. People had time and were at home. So, yes, of course, they started exploring all those streaming services.
But what is really motivating is that there's such a hunger for content.
Yeah.
Just
got bigger. That's good news, right?
It feels also like a confidence boost because you know that there's going to be a market for your film because people want to see. So
yes, it is a Wild West, Kristine, but we're getting it organized. We're not there yet. It is wild. But the good news is there's enough gold there. There's so much hunger for content, and we can make a lot of more content than in the past. So when we, 70 years ago, had to make one show for all, now we can make shows for a lot of people through a lot of platforms, right, Sebastian?
Yeah, absolutely. And we see it also in our space because we see it in the app economy, so independent of content. Just in Germany, just was a report issued 2 weeks ago that end of 2019 till today, the volume that was made, basically the revenue with apps, has doubled in that time. So in the last 18 months, the revenue has doubled, and actually the amount of advertising based apps went down to 16%. So people are really willing to pick up this subscription model and to subscribe to what they like, or unsubscribe if they don't. And also another thing I wanted to add to what Kristine said before, and Irina as well, is with this comes really the possibility to learn directly from the individual consumer. And as I said before, for big platforms, your content might just be fuel, but for the individual kid or the individual parent, it can be life-changing. And I think that is something we see in the pandemic. It was absolutely life-changing for people to be able, I'm one of them, I have 2 boys at home, and I have months and months of homeschooling behind me. So it was great to have all these different possibilities. And maybe just one nugget of information, which was really interesting, because we have, of course, a very varied client base. So we have book publishers, animation studios, broadcasters, and distributors as our clients. And everyone across the board told me that it was much more challenging to launch new IPs in the pandemic, because people went back to what they've known from their childhood. So the books, like for example, Oettinger, they had the Astrid Lindgren year last year. So they sold a lot of Pippi Longstocking. But it was much more challenging to bring new titles to, because in the pandemic, everything is unknown to you. So you go back to, what feels, it's like a little bit like comfort food for your soul, stuff that is familiar to you. And then we saw that in games, we saw that in books, and we also saw that in audiovisual content.
I like that idea that ultimately we are comfort creatures in a sense, and that all of these kind of various new innovations maybe also reflect that we want more immediacy, more transparency, more trust, more platforms that we can distribute, but also through which we can consume.
We've seen this with radio. I mean, when television came, people would sing television killed the radio star. It didn't happen. Yeah. People would still keep radio. So I think, yes, there might be a lot of new platforms to come, but people will add them to the existing platforms, and maybe they'll use the existing platforms less, of course, but they won't throw them away. It's a comfort for a family to, after a long week of everybody watching on his or her own mobile, to come together and watch a show on Saturday night together, or watch a football match together, like happened here in Holland last night when Ajax in this city won.
I heard the screaming on the streets as well. Yeah,
exactly. That's what I meant with shared moments are still important. That comfort part of how we want to be as humans is still important to have, and not just everybody having his or her own content on his or own device.
Well, I'm looking at the audience if there's maybe a final question to kind of conclude this panel. If there's not, I think this was actually a beautiful note maybe to end it on. Maybe somebody wants to add some final words or thoughts or perspectives or exciting things they want to share. No, just breathing. Just breathing. Yeah. That's really good.
It's all been said.
Yeah,
everything's been said.
Mezen just totally killed it at the end. So I think then without further ado, we can give a very warm applause to all our panelists. Thank you very much. Mezen Danawi of NPO Start, Kristine Knudsen, Sebastian Wehner, and Irina Albita. Thank you so much for joining us, also digitally. We hope you'll have a great continuation of Cinekid. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody.
And thank you.
Oh, yes, okay. Thank you very much.